Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, June 21st, 2018. Can you believe it? It's almost to July, so the summer is flying by. Hope you all had some good rest last night, and it looks like it might rain again today. Excuse me. So get out there and enjoy this morning. Just want to continue in our series on storms and kind of what everyone is facing. Let me tell you, there's three places that you and I are always in. We're either coming out of a storm, we're either going into a storm, or we are in a storm. All of us are in the same type of situation. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like you're all alone, because I want you to know that you're in good company, because we're all kind of voyagers together in a storm at some point in time. I often remember that. Even, maybe you're coming out of one, but and you're catching your breath and you're just kind of going, oh man, I hope the next one isn't right around the corner. And you might come upon somebody who's in the midst of a storm, and you can be compassionate and share help with them. And so I hope you do. So today I just want to continue in our series on the storms and just the raining down on suffering and affliction. And so think about this, that there are three kinds of storms. There's a corrective storm, there is a protective storm, and then there's the perfective storm. And so let's talk first about the corrective storm. Well, the first person that comes to mind is Jonah. You guys all remember him from Sunday school, Jonah and the whale. And he was called by God to go and preach to the people of Nineveh, who were very wicked. And he rebelled, and he's like, I'm not going, God. So he went away from God and away from the direction in which God had called him. Well, God says, guess what? You're going to go the way I asked you to. And so many times we don't want to go the way that God wants us to. And so God brought upon this storm, so to speak, and he put him in the belly of a big fish. And he lived there for 3 days, it says in the Bible, meaning that until he got his head on straight, until he came into the will of God, he had to stay in this type of storm. And so many of us are in things that we have brought upon ourselves. Now, does God do this like you made your bed, you're going to lie in it, or the kind of saying that you can have your cake and eat it too? Kind of, I don't believe that's how God is, in the sense that he makes us pay and punishes us, but there are times that we reap what we have sown. There's definitely a harvest time of our dealings. So I just want to share with you that there is a time to have a corrective storm, and God often uses those times to correct us. Now, secondly, there is a protective storm, and this allows for God to protect us. Sometimes he will protect us behind the clouds. Sometimes he will protect us in the storm. He will keep us away from something that may be even worse. He may be hiding you in. Think about the hurricane. The eye of the storm is very, it's quiet there. It's perfect. It's beautiful. They say when the pilots fly into it, it's like the calm is there. You might be in the midst of that storm while everything else is brewing around you. And God sometimes will put you in the eye of the storm where you do have a peace about you, but you can see everything around you swirling, and knowing that on the outside everything is chaotic. But sometimes God will place you in there, in that pocket, inside a storm. And sometimes you're just like, I should be feeling worse about this in the storm that we're seeing, but I don't. And that's okay too, because there is a time for God to protect you in a storm. And then thirdly, there's the perfective storm, where God allows to make you stronger, better. He will grow your faith. He will teach you to persevere. He will teach you to have endurance. And that's the kind of storm that most of us are in and stay in most of the time, where God is using a storm to perfect us. We don't ask for the storm. It's kind of like we talked about yesterday in Luke 8, where Jesus said, come on to the disciples, let's go across to the other side. And he said the disciples didn't know what was going to happen. That horrific storm came up, that hurricane. Some versions said there was like a whirlwind underneath them. The waves came, so it was over the boat. That means they couldn't see out. People couldn't see in. It was a tumultuous storm. But when Jesus invited them to come into the storm, or come onto the boat ride, they had no idea what they were about to encounter. So God may be asking you to go into something that you have no idea what's on the other side. But here's the thing about God, is he doesn't promise us a safe passage, but he does promise us a safe landing. And so many times I think we get caught up in the non-safe passage, that things aren't good here on earth for us. And here's something I want you to think about. This is a great picture analogy. Think about a plane ride. And would you rather have a really safe ride and have a crash landing, or would you rather have a turbulent ride and have a safe landing. Think about it that way, because really turbulence is just the change in current. And so many times our lives, the current changes and we don't like it. And we're like, God, what are you doing? Well, think of us when we've been on a plane and the air, the plane rocks and we feel unsettled. And a lot of times you just watch the airline stewardess and watch her reaction. If she's calm, cool, and collected, and she's still passing out drinks and goodies and peanuts and stuff, you're good to go. It's when she starts to panic that you think, oh, maybe I should panic too. You know what? I think we get so caught up in the passage part of, I want this really safe passage, Lord. I don't want anything to go wrong with my life. I want good things for me. And then, I want to get there safely too. But I don't think that's how it happens in life. God doesn't promise us that safe and careful passage, but he does promise us that safe landing. And here's the thing, and this one is for believers and non-believers. So if you're a non-believer and life is going good for you, this truly will be the best that it gets. It's the ending that is yet to come that's not going to be good. And if you're a believer, this will be the worst it gets, because your ending is going to be so great. So think about that, especially those of you that are struggling in life today and wondering why God, why, and when God, when. And I struggle with those questions all the time too, and just think, Lord, what are you up to? Why this storm? Why do you have to allow all this heartache and this tough time? There are people that have lifelong storms. I think of Johnny Erickson Tata, who had she's a great speaker and a woman of faith, that she had a diving accident at 19, and it was a terrible diving accident and broke her neck, and so she's a quadriplegic from the neck down. But she still goes about and teaches and shares the word of God with everybody, encouraging disabled people. That is a lifelong storm for her. Recently, she's just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And you just keep asking, Lord, what else? What more can happen? But she continues to forge forward. And I came across a really neat quote about hammers. And sometimes we feel like we're being hammered down by God, and the pressure and the pressing in. And I've dealt with that myself and just frustrated. And there's a great passage, or just a little quote, that says, the hammer can shatter glass, but the hammer also forges steel. And I think so many of us forget the fact that God may be using that pressure, that pressing, to forge you into something great. He may be forging you with like a steel. We've talked about where Joseph, when he was enslaved, the iron embedded into his neck. He became like iron. The iron became part of him, that strength. And so many times I think we forget that although the hammer does shatter glass, the hammer also forges steel and can also be forging you into something mighty and great. And so whatever storm you're in, I just want to encourage you. Maybe you're coming into one. Maybe you're just coming out of one, or maybe you are in the midst of one. Could I encourage you to be like the disciples, to cry out? And that crying out means to really cry out. And we can read about that in Psalms, all through Psalms, where David would cry out to the Lord. And God is not too small, or he's not angry. He can take our questions. He can take our whys and our when, God, and we don't have to be afraid to approach him. But I want to encourage you today, whatever kind of storm you're in, I just want to encourage you with this passage out of 2 Corinthians 4. Let me get here real quick. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me find it again. Oh, shoot, I lost it. Okay, 2 Corinthians 4, verse 16, it says, through 18, therefore, do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweigh them all. We fix our eyes not only on what is seen, but on what is unseen, meaning Jesus. For what is seen is temporal, but what is unseen is eternal. Maybe you're like Peter, we talked about the other day, and walking on water. And as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was fine. He was safe. It was then and only then that he took his eyes off of Jesus that he began to sink. So this tells us in 2 Corinthians that to look for the things that are unseen. Maybe look for that passage in the Bible that you know that the Lord never sleeps nor slumbers. He will never leave you nor forsake you. You know, whatever you're going through today, be encouraged that God goes with you. He walks on those stormy seas. He walks on that tumultuous water with you. He stays in the boat with you. You know, we read in the passage yesterday in Luke that he was asleep during that storm. Could you imagine a storm being so strong that it was being flipped over and someone could sleep there? So many times we think, God, why are you asleep at the wheel? Why are you asleep in the midst of my storm? And you know, when he awoke, he said, hey, storm, silence yourself, be quiet, be still. So many times I think we blame God, thinking that all the storms come from him. And that's not always true, because we can look at the life of Job and think of the first 2 chapters in Job where his children were taken from him, and what killed his servants and his kids and his home. Those were storms that came in, like literal storms. It said that storm came in and crushed their house. It was like a hurricane, and it tumbled down on his family, and that's what killed his children. You know, that was the doing of Satan, because God allowed Satan to kind of beat up on Job, for lack of a better word. He asked God, he said, can I have your servant Job? And God said, yes, you can, but you cannot kill him. But so we have to know that in that storm, you know, Jesus was asleep. He didn't create that storm with the disciples here that we read about in Luke and in Matthew. And that the enemy is behind a lot of storms in our lives. So here's our thing. We have to keep our eyes on God, and we have to be willing to cry out for help. And we have to know that he goes with us when the waves are high, when they're low, when the boat is calm, when the boat is rocking. You have to know that Jesus is always, always with you. And remember this, that safe passage is not always guaranteed to us, but we are guaranteed a safe landing. So if it's really hard right now in your life and you're a believer, remember this, that this is the worst it's going to get, because your ending is going to be so great. You are going to come to a safe landing on the other side of the shore. And Jesus said that, come with me to the other side of the shore. He didn't say anything about what was going to happen in between there, but he did promise them that safe that safe landing on the other side. And I believe they ended up on the other side of the shore with something very safe, but they had a story to tell afterwards. So would you be encouraged today by just knowing that those storms you're in or coming out of or going into is also passing by. Storms don't stay. And even if you're in the storm of a lifetime that stays for your life, remember, this is temporal. We're not staying here. This is not our home. Jesus is going to return and take his children home with him. So this too shall pass. And so I just want to encourage somebody today who's feeling pretty weighed down by the weight of the waves. Your boat's filling up, your boots are filling up, you know, you're bailing out and trying to throw water out of the boat. I just want to encourage you today to just keep your eyes on Jesus, stay focused on him, and everything's going to be okay. So have a great Thursday. I'll see you back here bright and early tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.